Hi there, and welcome to Splinter Unit Conversations. In this episode, we sit down with Duckworth, the visionary behind Dear Coco Coffee. We dive deep into Ant's journey from marketing director at American Express to launching a community-driven coffee truck during the pandemic. We explore his unique approach to marketing, the power of building in public, and how social media helps attract investors. Ant shares valuable insights on scaling a business, the role of video content in brand storytelling, and the future of Dear Coco as it continues to expand. Let's jump right in.
Dear Coco was a retirement dream, and at 46 years old, it was a little early to have a retirement dream, but, in the middle of the pandemic, around December 2020, my corporate career was hanging by a thread. I was an international marketing director at American Express, and I led an international team of experiential marketers. And our job was to create brand experiences at scale in real life, for the brand. So no marketing channel got turned down quicker when the pandemic came through than my channel. So I lost the majority of my budget. My team were displaced within other parts of the organisation, and I was wallowing around with no creative outlet during that period. So I stood in the kitchen one rainy night in December of 2020, and I let my wife in on a little dream of, at some point later in life, I had this dream of opening a coffee truck and serving beautiful coffee to surfers running in and out of the ocean, probably in Australia at that point. But the time was now to pull that dream forward and kind of pull me out of this lack of creative state that I was currently in, given I couldn't exercise my creative spirit anywhere else. So I begged my wife to empty our family's life savings account of £40,000 to go and build this coffee dream that existed only in my head. And it was my way of just giving myself that creative, positive outlet, in a really difficult time for everybody, where the world was a bit flatter than it would normally be. And fast forward, 5 months later, we opened along the river in Chiswick here in West London. And then 3.5 years later, we're held in a very high regard in the global coffee industry and have set a new tone for the coffee truck category. And it's just been a wild ride. And long may it continue. We were up and running, and we'd set a brand, tone of voice. We were achieving some lovely things down at the truck, giving a great customer experience. The business was commercially strong. We'd set a lovely kind of brand, tone of voice online. But one thing we were missing, I think, was video. I was doing my best to create some great content using Reels and my own iPhone and things like that. But I think that was the missing part of our game. And when you connected and we met up, it was just a wonderful moment where I really wanted to start exploring video as a potential way to get people deeper into the story of Dear Coco. Because flat imagery is great and long form storytelling is great, which are two things that I do on Instagram and LinkedIn every day. But what was missing was the power of video and bringing that richness to the story. So, since we've come together and done some great work together, I feel like people get a richer sense of what we're about because they can hear it and feel it at a different pace and get a lot more depth to the story. So it's been brilliant. Family is at the epicenter of Dear Coco. I mean, the name of the business, Dear Coco, it's named as a love letter to my now 8-year-old daughter, Coco. She's the youngest of 3 girls. And the reason for that is because when I originally set up the business 3.5 years ago, I knew that my 2 older teenage daughters, would be able to be involved in the business to assist the barista down along the river and earn money and treat it like a bit of a part-time job. Whereas the gap between Coco and her older sisters is about 7 years. So she was going to get left behind and completely left out. So I named it as a love letter to her to make her feel loved and included too. So family is at the epicenter of what this business is about. But how it steers me as an entrepreneur, it sets a fire underneath me that, I can't fail, much like everybody else. We cannot fail. We can't let the ball drop. Our job is to provide to the best of our ability and be successful to the best of our ability. And it keeps a fire burning red hot underneath me so that when things get a little tricky or some curveballs come my way, or the rain is bashing the side of the house and the thought of getting up and driving a coffee truck to the river at 5:30 in the morning when it's freezing outside, if ever those thoughts creep into my mind, family comes straight to the top. And it motivates me to just press on and be resilient and never give up. One of my best qualities, I think, is I'm not particularly gifted at anything. I'm not technically knowledgeable about anything. I have a good level of understanding of most things going on. I'm a good generalist. But the one thing that I think I'm very good at is determination, resilience, and having an iron will. Now, the iron will to provide, underpinned by a deep sense of gratitude, is a combination that makes me me. You know, I will never give up in the face of adversity. Running a coffee business and running a coffee truck business is not for the faint-hearted. It throws lots of obstacles at you, and it draws on skills that I'm naturally built with. That iron will determination to never give up. So that's how I'm built, and I got given that as a gift by my father. He was built the same way. So I'm well set up to work hard and deal with obstacles thrown my way. And when it comes to, you know, other things that other entrepreneurs kind of might benefit from, I think just having a deep sense of commitment to the cause, and not being easily dissuaded. You know, you hear no and you get obstacles probably more than you hear yes, and you feel the wins. You know, especially when you're in a customer service industry, you have to operate on the edge of perfection all day, every day. You can never let the ball drop. So just having that steely determination to perform at a very high level and never let a setback kind of dent your confidence. You have to recover pretty quickly. I imagine it's like professional sports. You know, tennis players always talk about the most important quality is moving past the disappointment of a lost point so you can quickly focus on the next one. Being an entrepreneur feels like that. You know, try to get the majority of big decisions right, and if you get one wrong, learn from it and try to bounce back pretty quick. Yeah, it was a challenge. You know, I set my corporate life up to try to facilitate a side hustle. And how I did that was, you know, I was a director role at American Express, and I led a team spread all over the world. You know, based here in London, I was leading a team in Australia, across Europe. I was reporting to New York in the US, and had people and partners all over the world. So my corporate diary was crazy. It was always on. You know, I was doing calls at 6 in the morning until midnight, right? So I structured a life in corporate where I did a compressed work week. So I did full-time hours over 4 days, Monday to Thursday. So that gave me a little bit of breathing space on Friday in order to recalibrate and turn my attention towards Dear Coco. And for the first 5 months of the business, I operated it as a complete side hustle in that I'd do 4 days, 4 compressed days at American Express, very long days, and then I would be my own barista Friday, Saturday and Sunday down by the river. And the goal was to pay off the investment in the truck of £40,000 as quickly as possible without paying myself a cent. So to take my corporate hat off late on a Thursday night and then put my paperboy cap on a Friday morning and go and be my own barista and work 7 days a week while building a brand and trying to establish a tone of voice on Instagram and grow the kind of global audience as well as give the in-person customers a great experience. It was probably the most hectic time of my life. And when we were able to pay off the business, which took about 5 months. I expected it to take about 13 to 15 months, but we were instantly pretty successful, which I was so grateful for. I was able to recruit a team of baristas and expand the operations of the business, but still managing the side hustle of Dear Coco as now a scaled single coffee truck at 6 days a week and trying to lead a high-performance marketing organisation at American Express concurrently. It was an incredibly busy time, but also I made sure that both parts of my professional world got 100% every single time. So I would never take from American Express and give it to Dear Coco and vice versa. If my commitment was to a corporate job, it was all in on that, and Dear Coco would just have to wait, and if it meant very late nights, it would have to mean very late nights. So both got my 100%, and I allowed myself very little downtime to perform at that level over what was a 3-year period. The discipline has to be immense, and also being fair to who's paying your paycheck. A side hustle should by definition be a side hustle. It's a side dish to the main course, and the main course has to be who's paying your paycheck. So I know it is tempting to go off and put your energy into a passion project, especially if you're working from home and maybe a little bit out of sight from your corporate hierarchy. But for me, the way I am built, I'm quite an honourable professional person. So I made sure that whenever American Express was paying my wage for those hours of the day, and there were many hours of those days. It was 12, 14-hour days. I gave everything to my corporate role because I felt that was the fair thing to do, and Dear Coco just had to wait. And if the price of doing that meant that I was doing Dear Coco related activities at 2 a.m. and I had to get up at 5 to take the coffee truck to the river, that's just how it had to happen. So discipline, rigor and fairness, I think, are really important when managing a side hustle, because it's so tempting just to do what you love. But the reality is someone else might be paying you to be doing that, and that's not a fair thing. Sam was watching as part of our global audience for years. Sam's an Australian coffee tragic like me, loves amazing specialty coffee, and had a life as a public company CEO and technology business builder, and very successful person in his own right, and was looking for his next chapter, after he sold his Silicon Valley-based technology company. And he was watching Dear Coco from afar, like a lot of our global audience. And the kind of funny part of the story is, I say Sam found me on the street, literally, because I'm a street coffee truck owner. But he loved what he saw from how we presented online, how I spoke about our business, my resilience as an entrepreneur, how I juggled two very different professional lives, corporate and entrepreneurship or small business ownership at the time, and how I was able to present the business to the world. And what he also liked, his business brain and investor brain kicked into high gear when I would be sharing a full open look at our financials online, which is incredibly rare for a small business to do. Normally that's behaviour reserved for large corporations because they have an obligation to reveal their financial performance to the market. I took that same approach with Dear Coco, because I felt like I was sitting on an encyclopedic level of knowledge that I thought a lot of coffee truck entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs could benefit from. So I give people a look inside the deep bowels of our business, in how much revenue we make, how much net profit we make, how much every line of expenses costs me, how much I pay myself. And that formed a wonderful, transparent voice around my business that, as an investor, he was seeing that Dear Coco as a single coffee truck was throwing off a net profit of 35%. Now that is technology style returns on a business. That's very unusual for hospitality. So a couple of combinations of him loving what he was seeing from a brand perspective and then seeing the financials and the unit economics from a business perspective all came together, and he reached out to me on Instagram and LinkedIn and asked to set up a meeting, and he came to London and we had a wonderful 7 or 8 hour long lunch and just spoke about my vision for the business and how we might work together. And we just got on like a house on fire, which was so important from an investor entrepreneur relationship perspective. We have to like each other as people, and we ticked all those boxes. And then a few months later, after we'd kind of valued the business and gone through the process of opening up to be 50-50 partners, we set a strategy in place and we're now activating it. So it's a wonderful story of a big business, former public company CEO, very successful person, kind of finding this guy running a coffee truck on the side of the street who is, probably batting above his weight from a category perspective. And we've come together and we form a really unique, great team. Franchising is a beautiful way to achieve what Sam and I are so passionate about, which is enabling entrepreneurship. Coffee trucks are a wonderful way for somebody to, start the flywheel of being their own boss or own their own business. If someone wants to get into the coffee industry, investing large sums of money to go and open a traditional brick and mortar cafe is quite often a deterrent, and the margins that that can potentially spin off are quite low. So it's high capex, being high capital expenditure, it's high OPEX, which is operating expenditure, and the return for that is typically quite low net profit. So it's a difficult unit economics model, but coffee trucks are the reverse of that. It's low capex, low OPEX, high net margin. So for someone to go from working for someone to being their own boss using the power of coffee trucks is incredibly appealing. So we felt like what a wonderful way to take Dear Coco, which has already changed my life, to potentially change other people's lives, was incredibly appealing. But obviously the consideration with franchising is, once you've got a beautiful brand in single form, how do you maintain the magic of that and make sure that the premium quality that we became famous for is maintained by these other franchisees, or what we're calling entrepreneur partners. So we've had to be very, very guided and guarded around how we set these entrepreneur partners up for success, the expectations we have on them as the franchisor, and setting them up so that they can continue to tell the story of Dear Coco that we've set with our Chiswick coffee truck, but then be their own boss and do it and be an owner of their own business, but feel incredibly supported by Sam and I as business coaches and mentors, but also the brand of Dear Coco, which is a premium brand in a section of the industry which doesn't really have premium brands. So we're being incredibly intentional with who we welcome into the Dear Coco family and really setting them up for success with the tools, the equipment, the vehicles, the coaching, the supply chain, everything they need to be successful. So it's a great way we can hopefully change some more people's lives with Dear Coco. I think people just like real people. There's no veneer to Dear Coco that you quite often see people show the Instagram version and then the reality. The Instagram version for us is our reality. Yes, we have some beautiful imagery, but the storytelling that accompanies those images are coming from a real person that's just like everybody else. If things are challenging and testing me, I'll talk about it. If things are going great, I'll talk about it. If I'm really struggling along and I need some support, or something away from coffee is causing me some grief, I'll talk about it. A coffee truck is very much the avatar to Dear Coco, but sitting behind that coffee truck avatar is a real person with a real family who's going through real challenges, who is building in public in every sense of the word. So if you come and look at Dear Coco online, yes, you will hear a lot of coffee related and see a lot of coffee related content, but sitting behind that and next to that is the life of Aunt Duckworth and my journey as an entrepreneur and now a CEO and founder of a scaling coffee company. So you will come and just connect with a real person. A lot of our audience aren't actually interested in coffee. They're interested in entrepreneurship, family man, a man talking about topics that typically men don't talk about in public. So a lot of our followership is just regular people who aren't fussed about coffee. They just want to see a guy in his business doing his best and trying hard. So I think we're pretty relatable in that sense. I show up as myself and I don't market myself. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I speak openly around what it's like to be me, the challenges that I and we all have to go through every day in order to deliver a small business to the public every day and deliver a great experience. So I'm very much a non-marketing marketer. I don't think too much about personal brand or how I market Dear Coco because I don't have rigid brand guidelines to adhere to like I have with other corporations that I've worked with, whether it's Amex or PwC or a major bank in Australia or hospitality groups that I've worked for. They've had very rigid brand guardrails that everything has to fit within. And quite often before it gets to market, it has to go through many layers of review. So by the time something gets to market, it's a shadow of its original self. With Dear Coco starting as a single coffee truck business, I can set the brand tone and I can show up in market however I like and really not think about polishing some product or some marketed figurehead that I want the public to see. I just showed up as myself. And of course I set a brand tone and guidelines for myself. I will never say anything inappropriate or polarizing. I will never judge anybody. I will just comment on how I'm feeling and thinking about things and my reality. And people either can relate to it or they can't. So my personal brand as such is I don't really have one. I just show up as myself and I speak authentically and openly and honestly and never offend anybody. And if you can relate to that, fantastic. If not, you're going to see some great coffee content and some beautiful pictures and that might be enough for you. So it's very liberating not to be worrying about brand or marketing. We can just be ourselves. Community is everything. I mean, if you look at our truck number 1 down along Strand on the Green in Chiswick, the community makes us successful. It's funny the power of something that rolls away every day and rolls up every morning. It has the power of becoming a community meeting point or focal point. Much like a traditional brick and mortar cafe, the role that might serve. If done well, a coffee truck can really create that town centre vibe in community. And it's funny watching the community's behaviour when they're in line queuing up for their Dear Coco Coffee at the coffee truck. Strangers will speak to strangers. They will get off their phone and enjoy their surroundings. We're right on the river, beautiful part of the River Thames here in London. And so the community feels like it lets its guard down for that 5 minutes that they're either enjoying their coffee, standing there watching the river, or they're in line to get a coffee. The community bringing togetherness using coffee and a coffee truck is immense. So that in-person or in real life community building is absolutely a thing. And coffee is something habitual that we want and crave every day. So we all know we're going to want a coffee in the morning, more than likely coffee in the afternoon, and people time their coffee moments to engage with their community. It's a really beautiful thing. But then if you think about the online community, you know, one thing that has astounded me with the nearly 50,000 Instagram followers that we have is that the community that we've been able to build with such positive energy and me just showing up as a real person and not pretending to be anything that I'm not, is there is never any negativity in our online community, because the authenticity we lead with has created such a beautiful positive community around a guy just doing his best. Yes, there's an avatar of coffee, and coffee can be a debatable topic, but sitting behind it when there's just a regular guy doing his best to provide for his family and build a beautiful little business. I don't think too much about marketing tactics, but leading with an open heart and bringing the community on the journey, I think, is what has led to our success. And I can think of one particular thing that I did. I had to invest quite heavily in getting mains power installed down along the street at Strand on the Green, because we're having some generator issues powering the coffee truck, and it was resulting in us having to close the business because we're having mechanical issues. And the holy grail of coffee trucks is having mains power to fuel the whole business. It runs silent, it's dependable, and it's cheap, and it's environmentally a lot cleaner. But I needed to invest a significant sum of money to get mains power installed on the street. It's working with all sorts of government departments and councils and energy providers, and it was a disproportionate investment at the time of the business. But I did it because it was important for the future of the business. But what led to that was me essentially being very open with our community and saying, hey, I've just invested £6,000 in putting this mains power along the street. You know, help Ant pay off the box. You know, I didn't want to kind of cry poor, but I really did need to make some money to pay that back. So I essentially brought the community on the journey of me working extra hard and opening extra days on top of what I was doing at American Express to try to pay off the box. And it just gave a nice little tagline or heading to the initiative or goal that I was trying to set myself, which was, I've just taken £6,000 out of the family savings account, which we can't afford. Come and help Ant pay off the box. And the community really just rallied around us in a fun way in order to come and buy a coffee and buy a bag of beans and buy a bake to really help Ant pay off the box. So even though I gave it a bit of a marketing title, it was just a guy with a bit of community outreach saying, I'm not going to crowdfund this, I don't want any donations, I would just love you to come by for a coffee if you feel like one. And the community really rallied behind it, and it was a lot of fun, and people would come by and say, so how much longer until you pay off the box? It was a really lovely thing. It has given a richness and depth to our storytelling that, you know, I'm a long form storyteller on Instagram. I do defy logic a little bit, and I take up a lot of real estate to tell our story using imagery. But the ability to do, you know, 3 or 4 minute videos and really get the depth of storytelling and the richness of storytelling, and to inspire and educate through the power of video has been immense. But setting the tone, which you and I have been so beautifully able to do together using the power of video, it's a tone that you can set and a story you can tell with that imagery and flat imagery just can't do. So the sound effects, the chirping of the birds that you will lay into the background of some of the beautiful, you know, video footage that you take, the lovely cinematic feel of it, catching the morning light over my shoulder as I'm making a coffee, me exploring the local neighborhood, my voiceovers, the things we're able to put together just gives that depth of experience and that longer form storytelling, and hearing my voice. It has been incredibly powerful. And Dear Coco is one of those brands that I think encourages people to slow down a little bit and just read a little bit longer than maybe you would typically before you flick up, or maybe consume a little bit of video a little bit longer than you would typically do. So video has been incredibly powerful, and I'm so proud of the work we've been able to do together. I might suspect that small business owners probably think that video production is really expensive. I probably thought that in my earlier days, but it doesn't need to be expensive. You can shape a brief and engage with someone like yourself to really deliver the power of what you're trying to deliver, in a cost-effective manner. And you don't need to spend days and days and days of script writing and filming and editing and post-production to deliver a beautiful product. You and I work together in a pretty rapid-fire way, but the videos that we produce have such a high production quality that you would probably think that we've invested a large sum of money in these assets. So I would probably suggest that don't think that video needs to be expensive. Certainly it's a little bit more expensive than doing it yourself on your iPhone, but of course the product is completely different. So I would suggest that speak to some video professionals and really just say, hey, I've got a vision, and more than likely you're going to find some great partners who want to do it with you, because if your project is exciting, they're just going to want to be involved and help you tell your story. So it's something that I've demythed for myself, and now hopefully your viewers can demyth for themselves as well. It's not intimidating. Quite often you might think that it's intimidating. You and I love our working relationship because we just put each other at ease. We give each other creative space. I know what I want to say. I know what stories I want to tell. But you also have an eye for, well, I think that will look great this way. And we give each other creative space while also telling each other what we want. I'm sure from a filmmaker's perspective, you don't want an open brief so open that you don't really know what, the person wants. But equally, you don't want to be so prescriptive that it removes some creative flexibility. So I think setting a lovely working rhythm with your film partner is really key. And it's just fun. It's fun to do this stuff. It doesn't need to be intimidating. And the great news is it's not live TV. So if you get something wrong, you just reshoot it and recut it. So finding someone that puts you at ease, it can be a great day out. And I've really enjoyed every session we've done together, of which there's been many now, and long may they continue. Yeah, I'm very proud of that number. That number in the coffee industry is typically reserved for multi-location, multi-market, large coffee enterprises, which would no doubt have a roastery, many cafes, large online presence, some marketing spend sitting behind that as well, most certainly some agency support. So to do that on my own with an iPhone and some lovely photography provided by my wife and a friend of mine, Lucy, and some great video content with yourself. But it's disproportionately large for the business size that we are. And the reason I think for that is people see a real person, right? And it's not all about coffee. And when it is about coffee, I position coffee at an appropriate level so that I don't confuse people with being overly technical about it. But more than anything, it's a real person's story, trying to build a real business in public and being very happy to be transparent and vulnerable. So I think people find me and the Dear Coco Instagram account highly relatable, and they can kind of come to us and just connect with it at whatever level they want to. But we experienced a large amount of growth in a short period of time. I think we added about 10,000 followers in a pretty short period of time compared to how long it took to get us to the bigger number of 50,000. And a couple of pieces of video content really caught fire. So people love watching point of view, of where I've got a camera strapped around my chest and I'm doing barista related tasks. I might be making a flat white or doing a day in the life of my business. So the power of video then finding its way to the explore function on Instagram, and then 1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million. I think we got 5 million views on a video. The power of that in video form can provide those little boost moments as the rest of the algorithm is kind of using your other content. Yeah, originally it was all roads led to Instagram for us. I had never engaged with social media at all as a person prior to Dear Coco. So setting up an Instagram account to be a business account was completely new to me. And I was just myself and represented myself to the best of my ability and went all in on Instagram. And LinkedIn was an important tool for me as well. As a corporate person, I was already active on LinkedIn. But what I found with LinkedIn was not many people share original content and not many people allow themselves to be their whole self on LinkedIn, because that's more of a professional space where you almost want to front up, almost like it's a professional job interview and you always want to be polished. Whereas I have the same tone of voice on LinkedIn as I do on Instagram, which is just me. And I write all my original content. I don't boost other people's content. I don't talk about product related or business related things. I talk about being me. So it's all been about Instagram and LinkedIn because I felt like they were the two best places for me to spend my time. We are exploring and growing our YouTube channel because that's an important place for us to tell that longer form, richer video storytelling, which we're working together on. So those three working together do a great job for us. I'm sure at some point in the future of Dear Coco, I'll jump over to X and start having an opinion on some things. But for now, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube really do a great job for us. I run my life according to a couple of principles, and these are not for everybody, but if I can just share how I conduct myself, maybe there's something in there for emerging entrepreneurs for themselves. But I'm a big believer in owning the dark. And what I mean by that is the work you do out of view, under the cloak of darkness, when nobody is watching, is where you differentiate yourself. And that is where you create something very special, right? Because you never know when someone will be standing under a lamppost in the rain watching you work, right? So owning the moments away from view and working diligently when no one's watching, I think is the key. And it's certainly been the key to success I've had. Showing up and treating energy as a choice is really important for me. It is very easy to turn the energy down and say, I'm so tired and I can't be bothered and I'm just not going to show up today. But knowing that energy is a choice, and what I mean by that is if you feel physically tired, yet someone tells you that you're about to go and do the thing you love most in your life, you're going to all of a sudden turn your energy back on, right? You've chosen to do that. For me, energy is a choice. So showing up with purpose every day, because I choose to, is really important. Being me, I am my biggest competitive advantage, right? Showing up as me and just being me, being vulnerable, being transparent, playing to my strengths is my secret sauce. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't know everything. There's a lot I don't know. So being me is really important. Celebrating wins is really important as well. In the life of entrepreneurship, which I'm learning, is when you win, even if it's a small thing, celebrate it. You feel great about it because there's plenty of times when you're not going to win. You sit here for 10 hours a day building things, and quite often what you're building will never see the light of day. But celebrating those wins is really important. And the last thing I would say is trying to get better. No one's the finished article. I'm certainly not the finished article. So, I'm not a big reader. I'm not a big watcher of TV. I don't consume a lot of learning style materials, but I learn on the job. I learn from great people like Sam, great people like you, great people online from our customers. I'm just trying to get better at everything I do. So I'd say those 5 things in combination would be the package of advice that I would give because it's steered me well up until now. I'm not a big reader of books, so it's probably not a book, but there's a quote that I absolutely live my life by. It's not a quote, it's a snippet of a speech by Theodore Roosevelt. It's called The Man in the Arena, and if it's okay, I'd love to read it to your audience here, because it's something that I deeply connect with, and it very much explains how I live my life and what I think is important in how I choose to live. So let me just take 30 seconds to read this if you're happy for me to do that. But it's titled The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And the reason I love that is because it's all about just giving it a go. Just getting in the center of the arena and having a go, right? A lot of stuff that I've touched hasn't turned to gold, right? I'm lucky that I've had some success recently, but just being in the game and trying to the best of my ability and showing up every day when the rain is smashing the house and I don't want to go outside because it's cold and the coffee truck is covered in ice, showing up and being the man in the arena, win or lose, is, I guess, my way of living. And I'll never stop doing that until I can't do it anymore. And back to one of your earlier points at the start, which is, the importance of family. I cannot not go into the middle of the arena, because if I don't go into the arena, I can't provide for the family. So I tell myself, just get in there and fight and play to the best of your ability. And if it's good enough, it's good enough. If it's not, doesn't matter, at least you were there. So that's how I live my life, and that's been incredibly powerful for me. We have very lofty ambitions. We want to be the world's next great coffee company. Something that the specialty coffee industry can be deeply proud of. And Sam's overarching vision for our business that sits above that mission that I just mentioned to you is we want to be the best part of your day. Whether it's a cup of our coffee or an interaction with our team, we want to be an absolutely brilliant part of your day. Which is lofty when we all do great things with our day, but we truly want great things for this business. We want to grow a global coffee company that we can be proud of, but also represents the magic of what our starting origin story was, which is that beautiful little coffee truck down on Strand on the Green. So we've got big ambitions and we can't wait to keep growing this thing.